When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hey, folks. Yep, this is Mark Ludlow back with you on the Fearless Mindset Podcast. I'm not going to bore you with my story because you guys all know my story, so we're going to have somebody else's story shared today. And I ran into Mónica at the ONTIC Summit in Austin, Texas. It was a great event, and I was honored to be an invited guest. You have to be invited, I guess. And Mónica, due to her position where she's at, was also there for continued education probably. But I was just taken back by just the level of professionals that were there and just connecting with Mónica. We had a barbecue there at lunch and kind of hung out a little bit, talked to the war stories of the EP industry and that type of thing. We're not going to go into too much detail there, but we had our kicks and giggles on that one. But I just loved Mónica's passion for what she does, and I really admire what she brings to the table to the industry. If you guys don't follow Mónica on LinkedIn, please do, because she has a clubhouse group focused on the ladies. And if you're a woman out there and you're just always been curious about security and protecting people and being around that industry, check out Mónica's clubhouse and track her on LinkedIn as well. She's all over social media, and she's doing a great job at just educating and training and mentoring just people that are interested in getting in the industry. And we need Mónica's personality, and we need others' personalities to really elevate what we do in protecting people in our industry, because it's really a soft skill. It really is. We don't really need ninjas and stuff and close quarter combat stuff. It's just 90% of the time we're just doing soft skill stuff. But anyway, enough of that. Mónica, thank you for joining me. I know you're a busy lady over there in LinkedIn and just cruise around the world and what you do.
Let me, am I on mute? Am I good?
We hear you. I hear you.
It's one of those things these days with technology. You always have to double check if you're muted, because you don't want anybody to say you're on mute. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation to come on here, and thank you for talking about Clubhouse. We do have the Women in Protection on Clubhouse, and we're kicking it back off on May 30th. We took a little bit of a hiatus. That's been going on for a little over a year now, which is kind of mind-boggling that it's already been over a year. But we've had a lot of success in really reaching out to other people who may be struggling in the industry and just need a little bit of guidance. And although it's Women in Protection, we have a lot of men who are on there as well to give their perspective. And when we mentor other people, it's not gender specific. So I did want to make sure to point that out, because although it's Women in Protection, it really does. We do talk a lot about things in general that affect everybody. It's just women have a different approach.
Yes, they do. And often they soften the cultural issues. I've worked with many royal family members and stuff, doing with Sharia law, for example, in the Middle East. They have a way to bring things down and creating a cohesiveness with all parties on the staff that you're supporting. And I was fortunate enough to work with Michael Trott on one of the biggest Middle Eastern royal family details in Beverly Hills for about 3 months, I think it was. And I think he had the most female staff security agents of any detail in the United States at that given time. And I learned a lot, just watching, observing. Of course, we know who Michael Trott is in the industry, and the guy is just a great leader and what he's done in his career, and just watching the element and the environment and how it all flows. And it takes everybody to make it all work. And I had good experience with that.
Yeah, I've been on a few of those Middle Eastern details here in the U.S., and they always ask for females. And the interesting part about my career getting into executive protection was because of my law enforcement background, because of my language skills, And because the client specifically said he wanted a female. And, back then, it was, I don't think that was normal. I don't think that was something that was, unless you're Middle Eastern and you specifically have a cultural reason for requesting a woman. This was an American, high profile, high net worth individual who specifically wanted a female on his team. And the reasoning was he didn't want a big goon and didn't want it to be really super obvious that he had that kind of security with him.
Mm. So he toned it down quite a bit.
He toned it down very much. And so that...
Because he didn't want the attention? Is that what it was? He didn't want the attention drawn to him because of that?
He didn't want to seem like one of those people that had executive protection.
Okay.
He really wanted to he's very down to earth and just very personable, and he wanted to remain that way. So he felt that a big man would kind of take away from that.
Wow. And then people in LA would have a fit over that stuff. The Hollywood circuit.
Yeah, I think it's a different mentality. This was a professional, somebody who is very well connected, has his own foundation, is a big household name in business. Whereas in LA or California, and in the entertainment industry, it's a completely different mindset. So I really feel that it's really specific to the type of client that you're going to be working for. And many times, like the Saudis or from Dubai, the UAE, they want females to be with their females. And, it's a cultural thing, and it's normal to be requesting female agents for those type of details. It's really difficult for a female to get onto a detail where it's an entertainer, because they want, unless you're like an Amazon woman, you're most likely not going to get one of those details. But it's also a different level of skill sets, right? In corporate, you have to have the ability to speak the language. You have to have the ability to properly communicate and play those in office politics that it is inevitable. It's just going to happen. It's always going to happen. It's there. If you don't know how to maneuver your way through that, then it's going to be really difficult for you to be in a corporate setting. But then you have, individuals who hire executive protection for their families. And that can go either way. It really depends on the family and their belief system. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's just a matter of figuring out what you want to get into, what you want to specialize in, and then looking for those type of details.
When you said earlier, LA is such a different animal compared to the rest of the country. Is the culture like split up in quadrants in the United States? Like you have the Northwest, you have the Silicon Valley, you have LA, and then you have Florida and the Northeast. What have you seen in your travels with LinkedIn as far as the different personalities and attitudes and stuff? What would be the baseline you would say would sticks out the most with each quadrant?
To be clear on the question, is this specific to location or area of specialty?
I would say location. How is the EP, like we know LA, Hollywood's EP is totally different from Florida's EP. And then you have the Dallas, it's completely a different animal. How would you say they're different in each area of the country? What would you?
Well, I mean, if you are in LA, and you're not really willing to relocate, and that's where you need most of your work, and you don't necessarily want to travel too much, then you do a lot of residential security for the entertainers, which may include executive protection if they want that for their families. If you're an EP specialist that does travel a lot, you'll get a lot of entertainers, and you'll go on tour with them, and you have to commit to a certain time frame. And we're talking about anywhere between 2 weeks, or they can go on tour for 3-6 months at a time. And the question is, can you do that? And is that something that's within your wheelhouse and your bandwidth, with, depending on your personal situation? So corporate is a little bit different because everything is scheduled ahead of time. You don't get a lot of last minute, you don't have to have that go bag ready for those last minute calls. There may be a situation here and there, but it's not normal because everything is scheduled ahead of time. There's a lot of planning, logistics that goes into it. And then you have situations like when the Saudis come to the US and they're desperately looking for females, and you end up getting a phone call 2 days before they arrive because you just happen to be that next person on, to get that phone call. And then you decide whether you want to go or not. And the other thing to keep in mind too, with the differences, is that when you're talking about the Middle East, when they come to the US, they might say they're going to be here for a month, and it could easily turn into 3-4 months.
Easily.
So understanding, honestly, when you're getting into executive protection, regardless of whether you're female or male, understanding what area you want to get into is one of the important aspects. But the other thing is making sure that you have the right expectations. You're not, if you're a personal trainer normally, and you do executive protection on the side because of your experience and your training, and you go on a detail and you're used to eating every 2 hours, it's going to be difficult. And I say that because I've run into that. I've run into a situation where, you have somebody who does executive protection because when they got out of the military, that's kind of what they went into. But then they started doing personal training, and they got into this schedule of eating every 2 hours. And then they're complaining on the detail because they haven't been able to eat in 3 hours. And, they start getting cranky, and this isn't going to work.
Right.
So making sure that they have the right expectations going in, because once you go into a detail, your time is not necessarily yours anymore.
Yeah, you're hired help, and their expectations are, you're going to be the same thing. So the Middle East culture, they want to see the same face every day.
Yes.
They think we're all on call waiting for them to come to the United States. They really think that way. Yes. And the next thing you know, you do, like you said, a 2-month run turns into 6 months. And then all of a sudden your wife's blowing you up, your kids are blowing you up. Where are you? Yes. And then that's when the Family Foundation has issues, but that's their expectations. And another thing too is we just came out of the pandemic. So everybody kind of got sloppy and lazy and out of shape, counting myself. I got to lose weight. I got on the scale like, oh crap. I got to put that suit on, and I can't have the basketball showing up there. And so it's a reality is a reality. If you want to make that money, because everybody knows the stories of the Saudis, or the Middle East royal families bonusing at the end, the gifts, Rolex watches. I've heard some people getting houses and cars and all that. But the new crown prince, I think, put a kibosh to that and said, oh, you got a 1099, you got a paper trail, everything now. So it's not as lucrative as it used to be. But you're exactly right. And if you have 2 different businesses going on and you want to be a bodyguard, it may not be the best fit for you, for the team.
Yes. And I think it's extremely important to just identify which one you works best for you. For me, I did the Saudis. I've gone on tour with an entertainer. I've done book tours with clients. I've gone throughout all of Africa with clients. I've done quite a bit, but I have found that corporate is kind of more my cup of tea. So once I identified that that's where I wanted to be, it was a matter of finding a way to get into that industry. And obviously it's worked well for me. And what I want to do with women in protection is help others kind of get to that point where they identify where they want to go, how they want to do it, and then they just go get it.
There you go. Perfect. Well said. Question for you is, we're coming out of the pandemic. It's April the 28th right now, Friday. My phone's been ringing off the hook. What do you see on your scale? Because you're, with LinkedIn, and for the audience listening right now, if you're on audio, Mónica is the senior manager of global security at LinkedIn, risk management, and she does executive protection. So you can probably figure out by her LinkedIn profile what she does. And you're on the ground quite a bit. You probably have your ear to what's going on over there. What do you see happening in the industry right now? Is it shifting? Is it coming back? Is it still on hold? What's your thoughts?
Oh no, we're definitely moving forward. Everybody's desperate to just kind of get through this endemic, and just trying to figure out, what all the mandates are, depending on where you're traveling. We're a global company, so we travel all over. But we're starting to see a lot of more travel, more events, more in-person events. I also manage the global event security.
Really? Wow.
Of it. So
how many roles do you have at LinkedIn?
Just that. That's it.
Just that. That's enough.
Yeah, that's definitely enough. It's definitely enough. But my focus here at LinkedIn has been to grow the team and to really put together a solid executive protection program and a solid global event security program. And what I've done is I integrated protective intelligence into it as well. So in where I am, things are picking up. My counterparts at other companies are doing the same thing. They're traveling more. There's more in-person events. There's more need for executive protection. And I think one of the things that we have found, and it could be a result of the pandemic, that there are simply not enough people applying for the positions. Now, it could be because of location. It could be because of pay. It could be because they're not ready. And then the people that are applying for the positions are not quite at that level where you would want to bring them in. So they need a little bit more training. They need a little bit more knowledge. And one of the things that I have found with training as well is that we're great at teaching all the hard skills. We're great at giving somebody a gun, go shoot, right. Go work out, go running, driving skills, excellent. What we're lacking is the proper documentation, application, and having a really good sense of, pardon me, okay. A really good sense of, it's the risk mitigation portion of it, right? Because you want to make sure that everything is documented properly. If somebody comes back to you and says, you didn't do this, and as a result of that, this other thing happened, you want to properly protect yourself, and you're going to do that by properly documenting everything. So having an advanced packet, having the proper risk assessments done, knowing when it advances, understanding how the FBOs work, making those connections with other departments and also with other companies that are also doing the same thing. So you can do some benchmarking. Those are all extremely important things. And that's one of the things that is lacking in our training with executive protection. And it's not currently, it's not a regulated industry. So everybody's doing it differently. There's no standard. There's no one way of doing things. And every company is going to be a little bit different, but there's no baseline for that. And that's one of the things that I am noticing in the industry. It's just completely missing that. And I think it's an extremely important portion of what we do. It's kind of like if you're in the military and you're law enforcement, which I'm familiar with because I was in law enforcement and I'm from a military family. There's a lot of documentation that goes into that. You know, they call it the red tape. You have to go up through the bureaucracy of of your squadron or your department. And there's a reason for that. And one of the things that you see a lot of it, at least in law enforcement, is you have a lot of people wanting to go out and do, narcotics and go on the SWAT team and become a hostage negotiator, but they don't want to do the paperwork.
No, it's not fun.
It's not fun.
It's not sexy or glamorous.
It is, exactly. But understanding
it's needed.
That part of it is extremely important.
So Monica, you're just saying that checks the box are actually more critical than the hard skills of going shooting and moving from A to B and doing a square and circle. It's actually checking the boxes and documentation is more critical to your boxes. Having things set in place in a process is so critical.
Correct. For me, that's what it is. If you are on a team that goes to the Middle East on a regular basis or to a high threat area where the tactics are equally as important, then absolutely, right? Then that's perfect. That we should definitely continue to do that because there are certain teams that's what they do. They go in for weeks at a time in really high threat areas and they have specific missions. That's not corporate security. That's not corporate EP. That's not how we work. It's good to have those skills, but it's not what's going to get you the job.
So if I'm the audience, Monica, how does the corporate work? Because if we're getting all this slash dash on social media, I'm not going to name names. I'll keep neutral on that. I don't want to piss anybody off, but they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
But in your leadership position, what is corporate wanting from the EP sector? What do we need to provide to be successful in working with you?
So what I look for when I'm looking for executive protection, what I look for is I do want to see what your skill sets are.
Okay.
I want to see what, where you come from, what do you know? So if you have the firearms training and the tactics, that's all great, but that's not going to be the primary thing. So that's maybe 20%.
20%.
What I'm looking for. I want to know that you have communication skills. I want to know that you have really good English comprehension. I hate to say that, but it's true. I want to make sure that you know how to, that you have those soft skills, that you know how to get something done even when there's obstacles. I need somebody that can think outside of the box. If you run into a problem, I don't want you to come to me with the problem and then complaints. I want you to come to me with the problem and then a couple of solutions that you've thought of, and then we can discuss it, come up with a solution, and there you go. We're missing a lot of that. The hard skills are fantastic, but it's not the core of what I'm looking for. You do have to be healthy. You have to be, physically fit. You have to be able to utilize some of those tactical skills when necessary, but it's not going to be something that you're going to do all the time. So because those are perishable skills, you still have to continue your training. So if you have martial arts or, you do firearms, that's great. You can keep doing that, but that's a perishable skill. You're going to have to do that on your own. The skill, because you're not going to use those skills every day or even every month or every year in corporate, because that's just not how we roll. And the lights just went out.
I saw that. We have a blackout, and you're in Seattle, right? Rolling blackouts in Seattle.
Yes, I'm in San Francisco. Our office, the lights go off after a little while.
Oh boy, conserving energy. Water's going dry out there. So yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I see so many schools, we're not going to name names, but they're hard, 90% hard skill. But what you're telling me from the corporate side in leadership, they're looking for advancement, risk assessment, threat assessment. We got to check the boxes over here to report to the chief security officer, report to the shareholder and the CFO, and the legal team is looking at this stuff too for shareholder value. It's just the way it is.
Critical thinking, emotional intelligence, good soft skills, good communication skills, the ability to build relationships. Those are all, that's going to be the meat of what I'm looking for in an executive protection specialist.
And not a robot.
I know you do all that other stuff, but I need you to be able to do this, because talking with the people at the FBO, it takes a little bit of finesse to get them to give you all of the information that you need. When you go to venues and you are doing in advance, it takes those skills to be able to get that information that we need. Even when you're met with resistance, you're able to find a way to get the information that we need. If you're only tactical, you may not have those skills. You may not have that takes a little bit of developing. And if you don't know to develop that, you're just going to go to the gun range and yay, you got a nice tight circle.
Like James Hamilton said, what was the last case we had a shooting on an EP detail? Never. Hate to say it, folks.
It's, there was one shooting that I can refer to back in, I think a couple of years ago in Los Angeles. It was one EP. He was with an entertainer, and there was shots fired. That's right. He did have to utilize his weapon. But again, that's an entirely different industry. That's part of the that's kind of, in the entertainment industry, you're going to get that a little bit more, I think.
Right.
In corporate, we're looking more at cybersecurity issues. We're looking at stalkers, harassment. We're looking at, an entirely different type of threat. So, and it doesn't require a gun.
Yeah, absolutely. Verbal. It requires your mouth and your ability to communicate, like you said, soft skills.
Exactly. And those critical thinking skills, if we're going to have, a certain group of people, what do we need to know about that group of people before we allow them in to our little bubble? Those type of skills are what we really need in corporate.
I would agree. I found myself after I broke into the industry with Pinkerton back in 2008. That's how I got in the industry. And I did the corporate route, which made more sense to me because I came up from a banking background after I got out of college. So I understood the culture, so it was an easy fit for me. So I totally understand where you need to check the boxes, why the soft skill, the paper writing, report writing is so critical. You want to see a threat assessment, risk assessment, and make sure that boxes are checked for the AMS before you walk in there with your client. It's just how it is.
Right.
And for the audience listening, if you're listening right now and trying to figure out who Mónica is, I mean, if you look at her profile on LinkedIn, it's like, holy crap, she's done some stuff. And I took it on my legal pad, took some notes on her LinkedIn resume. And she started as a software instructor and became a reserve police officer in Illinois. And then she got into police work in Florida. She's a negotiator on the SWAT team, an instructor. And then she went into NARCS, detective, field training officer, Pasco Sheriff's Office, and she has been around. So she's no joke. I mean, she's got some solid experience. What was the most fun part of being a cop, Mónica, for you? What did you enjoy the most in law enforcement?
The part that I enjoyed the most in law enforcement was being a hostage negotiator on the SWAT team. That was bar none the best job in the world. Not only do you not only is it challenging because your weapon are your words. And the only way that you can disarm somebody is through words and understanding, compassion, empathy, respect. So you have to really tap into those skills to be able to talk somebody out of doing something that could be harmful to themselves or others. On the other end, it's also gratifying that you have the ability to save lives. So you can go home, and not that you don't do that on a regular basis as a law enforcement officer, but you do it in a whole different way. So being able to use your words to de-escalate situations, to talk somebody out of hurting themselves, you can go home knowing, you don't have to guess, you know that day you made a positive impact on somebody's life. And that is invaluable. I mean, that's priceless. So for me, I know I've saved a lot of people in my lifetime, and it has a lot to do with the skills that I learned being a hostage negotiator.
Wow. Was there any moment in time when you were negotiating someone's life or other people's lives that you were in fear of your own life, or were you pretty much sheltered? Or explain that, break that down for us.
Well, just because I was a hostage negotiator on the SWAT team, that didn't mean that that's what I did 24/7. I would get called out for those type of situations, but when I was not doing that, I was still a patrol officer. And so utilizing those skills to de-escalate situations, when you're in patrol, it's they're still effective. And there have been situations where you go into a situation and if it goes wrong, you're in a lot of trouble. And thankfully, I got out of most of those situations without a scratch.
Verbally?
Verbally.
You did it?
Yeah.
Verbally.